I used to think surprises were the glue in a marriage. Little things. Flowers on a Tuesday, a coffee left on her nightstand, a note tucked in a shoe. We'd been married 7 years, and while the shine faded here and there, I believed routine didn't have to mean dull. So when my client canceled a meeting and my afternoon opened up, I decided to do what the good husbands in commercials do. I grabbed a box of her favorite pastries from the place near my office, picked up a bouquet that smelled like a backyard after rain, and headed home early with the goofy grin of a man who expects to be the hero of his own evening. The air outside our townhouse felt lighter than usual. Spring sun bounced off windshields, kids scooted past on their way from school, and the maple tree near our porch scattered seeds like confetti. On the front step, I took a second to hide the pastries behind my back and fumbled with the key, rehearsing a line that would make her laugh. The deadbolt turned, but the door didn't budge. The chain was latched from inside. That wasn't normal. We never used the chain during the day. My first thought was that she was showering, being cautious. My second thought arrived with the sound. Muffled, light, a breath that didn't belong to a house settling. I knocked softly. "Babe? It's me. Surprise." No answer. I waited, knocked again, felt the tiny hairs on my arms stand up one by one. A shadow moved past the frosted glass panel, slow as if trying not to be seen. My stomach dropped so quickly it was almost funny. I stood there, flowers in one hand, pastry box balanced on my forearm, the picture of a fool in daylight. I didn't want to make a scene on the front porch. Our neighbor, a retired teacher named Gloria, was watering petunias and watching me the way people do when something feels off, but they don't know if it's their business. I gave an awkward wave, walked down the steps, and circled to the side gate that led to the backyard. The latch squealed and I winced. We'd talked about oiling it 100 times. I always put it off. Our sliding back door sometimes stuck, but it wasn't latched. It opened an inch with a nudge, and I slipped inside, shoes in hand to keep quiet. The house smelled different, like a department store fragrance aisle, sharp and sweet over the lemon cleaner we always used. The kitchen was tidy, too tidy for a normal afternoon. Her coffee mug was on the counter, lipstick mark fresh. A male voice floated from the hallway. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone broke me like a bad chord. Intimate. Familiar. I set the pastries on the table and looked around for something that could be a prop if I needed to look scary, but not actually do anything stupid. In the utility closet, wedged among brooms and paint rollers, leaned my old steel baseball bat from company softball. I grabbed it. Not because I wanted to use it, but because my hands needed something to hold that wasn't a bouquet that suddenly felt like a joke. The hallway stretched long and quiet as a church pew. I walked on the balls of my feet. From the bedroom came a laugh that wasn't hers, followed by a higher, breathy shush that was. My chest tightened. That little shush used to be our secret code for surprise parties and movie spoilers. Now it was a lock clicking in my head. I eased the bedroom door open with the bat held against my leg. She was there, in the mirror across from the bed, hair down the way she wore it when she felt pretty. A man stood near the window, his back to me, shirt unbuttoned. He looked like the kind of person who never waited in line, the kind whose shirts were always pressed. He reached for her and she looked up, saw me in the mirror and froze. For a second, nobody spoke. Then she gasped my name like a dropped dish, and the guy spun around, hands half raised, eyes wide. "Hey, man," he said, breathless but trying for calm. "This isn't—" It absolutely was. I couldn't get words out, so my brain offered me a list of small, dumb details instead. The way sunlight cut across the carpet, the tag still on his expensive watch, the book on her nightstand that I bought last month. My flowers wilted from the heat of my palm. I set the bat on the floor and leaned it against the dresser. I wasn't going to be that guy on the evening news, but I also wasn't going to pretend I'd misread the scene. I took a breath that tasted like metal and bakery sugar and said, "You should leave. Now." He looked to her, then to me. "I don't want trouble." "Then don't make any," I said. My voice surprised me. Steady, even bored. Maybe I had stepped outside myself for a minute, watching a stranger handle it better than I deserved. My wife, the word suddenly awkward in my mouth, moved toward me, palms out. "Please, just listen. It's not what you think. That line should come with a laugh track. I didn't laugh. You've got 10 seconds, I said to the man. And then I start taking pictures for the lawyer I'm about to Google. That did it. He picked up his shoes, slid past me with a muttered apology that might have been sincere if we lived in a world where apologies fix broken glass. I heard the back door, the gate, the quick steps across the alley. Silence filled the room like smoke. She stood by the bed, chewing her lip the way she did during scary movies. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and for a heartbeat, I believed she might be. Then she added, "You weren't supposed to be home." As lines go, that one told me more than any confession. I sat on the edge of the dresser and stared at the framed photo from our wedding, us laughing with cake on our noses. Memory tried to stage a rescue to drag me back to a happier shore. I didn't let it. I asked how long. She answered with a shrug that tried to be small and failed. Not long. A moment. A mistake. Words all dressed up to go to church, hoping the congregation would forgive them. I asked who he was. She told me, and suddenly I understood why the new client she'd mentioned last month had required so many late meetings. I wanted to yell. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, picked up the pastries, and set them on the counter between us like a peace offering from a different timeline. "These were for you," I said. I was going to say something cute about how even grown-ups deserve recess. She started to cry, soft, neat tears. She's always been tidy, even in sorrow. "I messed up," she said. "We've been distant. You've been busy. I felt invisible. I'm not defending it, I'm just—" She trailed off, and the rest of her sentence sat unsaid in the air like steam. I opened the box, took out a small fruit tart, and chewed without tasting. Outside, a truck rattled down our street. Somewhere a dog barked at a squirrel, ordinary sounds now wearing masks. "You could have talked to me," I said finally. "I tried." "When?" "In little ways. You didn't hear me." Maybe she was right. Maybe I had missed the small signs because I was busy looking for bigger fireworks. Marriage doesn't vanish in a day. It thins, thread by thread, until one tug pulls the whole sweater apart. But the humility of that thought didn't soften the fact that she'd invited someone else into our home, into the room where we kept promises in a drawer under the socks. I told her I was going to pack a bag and spend a few nights at my brother's. She begged me not to. She said we could talk, fix it, glue it back together with apologies and therapy. She reached for my hand and I pulled back. Not because I was cruel, but because touching her felt like touching a hot pan. My instincts had learned something, and my skin didn't want to forget. In our room, I pulled a duffel from the closet and started filling it without looking at anything too long. My bat leaned where I'd left it, ridiculous and heavy. I put it back in the utility closet. No need for props anymore. On my way out, I paused by the front door. Gloria stood on her porch again, pretending to prune a plant. That didn't need it. She gave me a look I couldn't read. I nodded. She nodded back. The silent language of neighbors, who know a little, but not enough. I set the flowers on the hall table and left. I drove without a destination for a while, past diners and playgrounds and couples walking dogs. My phone buzzed with texts from her that started with apologies and softened into pleas. I didn't respond. I parked by the river where people jogged, and a fisherman cast his line like a patient metronome. I watched the water and tried to imagine a version of my life that didn't feel like a room with all the furniture moved an inch to the left. When I finally called my brother, he didn't ask for details. He told me to come over, that the couch was fine, that he had cold beers and a pizza on the way. I told him I wasn't drinking. My head needed to stay clean. He said he'd order wings instead, and we laughed at the wrongness of that logic. That night, I lay on his couch beneath a blanket that smelled like his dog and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. Images kept replaying in my mind, but duller now, as if the film reel was already wearing out. I thought about our mortgage, the friends we shared, the vacations booked on calendars, the dozens of tiny routines that make a life. I wanted revenge, not with violence, but with something smarter, something that would make the truth sit in the light where it belonged. By morning, I had a plan that didn't cross any lines. No shouting, no damage, nothing that would tank anyone's job or put me on a list. Just clarity and a little theater. I made a list on my phone. Bank accounts, Shared streaming profiles, cloud storage, backup drive in the hall closet. I knew where the stories hid because I'd helped build the shelves. Before I went back to the house, I stopped by a hardware store and picked up a small lockbox, a stack of sticky notes, and a new journal. My hands shook a little at the checkout, but not from fear. Anticipation, maybe. The kind that comes before stepping on stage. When I pulled into our driveway, her car was gone. She'd texted that she was at her sister's, that she'd give me space. Inside, the air felt stale. I opened windows and let the afternoon drift through. I set the lockbox on the table, folded a note beside it, and walked through each room like a guest being shown around. I wasn't here to break anything. I was here to organize. I made coffee, sat with the journal, and wrote the first line. I came home early to surprise my wife. Then I kept going, not to publish or post or humiliate, but to make a record. Facts are solid ground. I needed ground before I took the next step. 2 hours later, the kitchen table looked like a detective show, but kinder. Neat stacks, not chaos. Receipts, calendars, messages, my own shortcomings listed beside hers. My plan didn't involve secrets. It involved sunlight. People act different when the lights are up and the audience is watching. Mine would be small. Family, a couple of close friends, a counselor we both respected. No traps. Just truth, presented plainly, my side and hers, and a choice at the end we'd both have to own. I closed the journal and looked at the clock. She'd be home soon. I picked up my phone to call her, to invite her to that conversation I should have initiated months earlier. The phone buzzed in my hand with an unknown number and a message that made me still as a statue. It was from the man. He wanted to meet. He said he owed me an explanation, and there was something I needed to know. He promised it wasn't more bad news. He said it might even help. I stared at the message, the cursor blinking in the reply box like a tiny heartbeat, and realized the story I'd started writing wasn't done rearranging itself. I typed back a time and a place, set the phone down, and looked at the bat in the closet, its dull shine peeking from the shadows. I didn't need it. What I needed was patience, a steady voice, and a memory, sharp enough to file every word. When we met that afternoon, I would find out why he'd risked contacting me, and why my wife had begged, and why it was already too late for the version of my life I used to imagine each morning before my coffee cooled. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting. My brother's couch groaned every time I shifted, and my mind refused to power down. That text from him, the man who had been standing in my bedroom like he belonged there, replayed in my head until dawn. Who asks for a meeting with the husband he just betrayed? Who thinks that's a good idea? Part of me wanted to delete the message, pretend it never arrived. But curiosity is a stubborn flame. It eats away at anger until you can't tell if you're furious or just desperate to know the truth. By mid-morning, I sat in a diner off the highway, the kind with vinyl booths, chrome trim, and a jukebox nobody used anymore. I ordered black coffee and watched the door like a detective in an old movie. He came in 10 minutes late, which told me he wasn't as nervous as he should have been. Crisp shirt, no tie, like he'd rehearsed casual. He slid into the booth across from me, hands folded on the table, eyes careful. "Thanks for meeting," he said, as though we were old colleagues catching up. "You've got 5 minutes," I told him. The waitress came by with menus. I waved her off. He ordered water, which seemed fitting for a man who didn't plan to stay long. He tapped the table once before speaking. "I need to tell you something. She didn't want me to, but I can't walk away from this without being honest." I waited. He took a breath. "This wasn't random. She and we've known each other for months. She told me you two were drifting, that she felt unseen. And I believed her." He rubbed the back of his neck. "But that's not the part that matters. What matters is, she said she wasn't sure she ever wanted the life you two had built. Not just the marriage. Everything. The house, the plans, the way it all looked from the outside." I leaned back, arms crossed. "You're saying she regrets marrying me?" "I'm saying she's been living in 2 worlds. One with you, one with me. She wanted both. But she told me..." He hesitated, and his face softened in a way that made me uneasy. "She told me she wouldn't choose, that one of us would have to do it for her." The words stung because they rang true. My wife had always hated making hard choices, what house to buy, which city to move to when my job offered transfers, even what to order at a restaurant. She left big decisions in the air, hoping they'd make themselves. I asked him why he was confessing now. He looked out the window, jaw tight. Because I realized I don't want to be someone's escape hatch. If she can do this to you, she can do it to me, and because— He paused, meeting my eyes. You don't deserve to live in limbo. Neither of us do. His honesty unnerved me. I'd imagined him arrogant, careless, maybe even smug. But this version, tired, conflicted, sincere, was harder to hate. I didn't thank him, but I didn't throw my coffee in his face either. We parted with no handshake, just a nod that said, "This chapter isn't finished." Driving back, I thought about what he said. A wife unwilling to choose is like a coin that never lands, suspended, spinning, exhausting everyone who waits for the outcome. And I realized something. I didn't need her to choose between him and me. That decision had already been made in silence. What I needed was to choose myself. At home, she was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table where I'd left the journal, flipping through pages I hadn't intended her to see yet. When I walked in, she shut it quickly like a teenager caught reading a diary. Her eyes were red, her voice thin. "You met with him." "Yes." "And you listened to him instead of me?" "I listened to both," I said evenly. "But one of you lied to me and it wasn't him." She flinched, then leaned forward, desperate. "I didn't lie, I just couldn't say it out loud, because saying it makes it real." "Exactly," I replied. "And real is where we live. Not half real. Not maybe real." Her tears came fast then, messy instead of neat this time. She begged for a reset. Counseling, trips, promises, words like bandages stacked too high to breathe through. I let her speak, because silence has its own power. When she finished, I told her I'd move into my brother's for now, and we'd sort the rest through lawyers. She cried harder, said it didn't have to end, that people make mistakes and grow stronger. But the truth sat heavy between us like a third chair at the table. It had already ended, long before I opened that bedroom door. Over the next week, I focused on details, closing joint accounts, backing up documents, calling an attorney recommended by a colleague. Practical steps feel like revenge when you're reclaiming ground. She called daily at first, then every other day, then not at all. The silence became proof that maybe she wanted me to make the decision for her all along. But revenge is a patient beast. Mine wasn't about screaming matches or social media theatrics. It was about control, taking back the narrative she tried to split in two. So I planned a dinner. Not just with her, but with both our families, the people who had invested years into believing we were solid. She thought it was a reconciliation gesture. She even thanked me for arranging it. What she didn't know was that I intended the dinner to be the stage where truth finally stepped out of the shadows. Not in cruelty, but in clarity. I didn't want whispers behind closed doors or pitying glances months later. I wanted daylight, where the weight of choices couldn't be hidden. The night arrived at her sister's house. The dining room buzzed with chatter, wine glasses clinking, laughter bouncing off walls that had seen countless holidays. She looked radiant, maybe because she thought she'd won me back. I let her bask in it, the illusion of a normal evening. When dessert plates cleared, I stood, journal in hand. Conversations dimmed. Faces turned.
Moving pallets with the
calmly,
forklift.
as though giving
Normally,
a work
I don't even check
presentation.
my phone when I'm
I
working,
told them about
but
the
this
day I
time it
came
wouldn't
home
stop
early,
ringing.
the man in my bedroom.
When I finally
the bat
pulled it out
I
of my
never
pocket,
used.
I saw
I
an
told them
unknown
about
number.
the meeting at the diner.
Something
the words
told me to
spoken,
answer, and
the
the second
decision
I
that
put
had
it to my
already been
ear,
made.
my entire
Her
world
eyes
tilted.
widened, panic flashing.
"Sir,
She
this
tried
is
to
Officer
interrupt,
Daniels.
but I raised a hand.
You need to come home immediately."
"You'll have your turn,"
My
I said
heart
gently.
nearly stopped.
And I continued.
Is something wrong?
Not embellishing.
What happened?
Not
My
dramatizing.
wife?
Just
My
the
kids?
truth, laid
Please
bare
tell
for the
me what's
people who
going
loved us
on.
both.
The officer's
By
tone
the
was
time I
urgent
finished,
but
the room
restrained.
was silent.
Your
but for
wife's
the hum of the
boyfriend is in your
refrigerator.
daughter's room.
Her mother looked
I can't
stunned.
say more over
Her
the
father
phone,
angry.
but you'll see for
Her sister
yourself.
confused.
Please hurry.
My brother, arms crossed in
Boyfriend.
the corner, gave me
Daughter's
the slightest
room.
nod.
I swear
She
time
stood
slowed
trembling,
down.
voice
My
cracking
chest
as
felt
she
like
tried
someone
to
had shoved
defend
a block
herself.
of ice into it.
But excuses
And for a
sound
second,
thin
I couldn't
when truth
breathe.
has already filled the room.
My wife had a
And as her
boyfriend,
words faltered,
and he
I
was
felt
in
the
my
weight
daughter's
slide
room?
off my shoulders.
The words didn't
I
even
hadn't
make
broken
sense
anything
together,
that night.
but my instinct
I'd
screamed at
simply
me that I
opened the
couldn't
blinds.
waste another second.
Revenge, I
I
realized,
dropped everything.
isn't always
Didn't even
fire
bother
and
telling
fury.
my supervisor I was
Sometimes
leaving.
it's sunlight.
I just threw
And
off my
sunlight
gloves,
changes
bolted out
everything.
of the warehouse, and jumped
The days
into my
after
truck.
that dinner were a
My
blur of
hands were
fallout.
trembling so
She
badly
moved out
that
of
I
the house,
almost
but
dropped
not
the
before her
keys.
family
And when I
called,
finally
messaged,
jammed
and
them into
pleaded
the
with me to
ignition,
forgive.
I floored it out
They
of the
wanted to
parking
believe
lot
it
like
was
a
slip,
madman.
a storm passing
Every
through.
red light felt like
But
a
storms
curse.
leave wreckage, and
Every
I'd spent
slow
enough
driver
time
in front of
cleaning
me
up
was
what
the
I didn't
enemy.
cause. Her
My
sister
mind
admitted
spun
later
with
that
images
she'd
I
known
couldn't
something
control.
felt off,
My daughter
but never
crying,
pressed.
some stranger in her room,
My brother
my
told me
wife
he'd never
standing by
seen me
doing
so
nothing.
calm in chaos.
Or worse,
Friends took
encouraging
sides,
it.
as friends always do.
The rage
Some
inside me
drifted
built
away
with every
quietly,
passing
unwilling to
second
sit
until
at
it was
tables
boiling
divided.
over. When I
Others
turned onto my
stayed,
street,
and
my
those
stomach
were the
dropped.
ones who mattered.
My house wasn't
I
just lit
expected
up.
rage to linger,
It was surrounded.
to wake me at night like
There
an
were 3
alarm.
squad cars parked
Instead,
outside,
peace
their
came
red
in
and blue
small,
lights flickering
surprising
across the
ways.
front lawn.
Folding laundry
Neighbors
without
were
finding
already
her
gathering
shirts
on their
mixed in.
porches,
Grocery
whispering,
trips where
staring,
every item
waiting
was
for the
mine too.
drama to unfold.
Choose mornings
I
when
slammed my
silence
truck
meant
into
freedom
park,
instead of
barely
tension.
remembering to
She
kill the
tried once
engine
more,
before I jumped
months
out.
later, to meet for
My
coffee.
boots hit the
I
pavement hard
agreed,
as I
out of
sprinted toward the
courtesy.
front
She
door,
looked
but
older
before I could
somehow,
push past the
weighed
cops,
down by
one of them
choices
raised his
finally catching
hand.
up.
"Sir, wait.
I miss us.
We need you
she
calm
said
before you
simply.
go in there."
I
"Calm?"
stirred my drink
I
and told
barked,
her the truth.
my voice breaking
I
from the
missed who
force
I
of my
thought we
anger.
were.
"My daughter is in there
That
with
was the
some
end.
sick man and you
No
want me to be
anger,
calm?
no shouting.
Move out of my way."
Just two people who had
The
written
officer
different
hesitated,
endings to the same story.
then finally stepped aside,
In time,
but followed me
I
close,
sold the house we'd shared.
his hand near his holster
Bought a
in case I
smaller
lost
place near
control.
the river, where fishermen still
Inside, the
cast
house
their
was
lines
chaos.
and kids raced
I could hear
bicycles
shouting
down cracked
upstairs,
sidewalks.
2 male voices,
The walls
one
held
of them
no
panicked,
echoes,
the other
only
angry.
possibility.
My wife's
People
voice
often
cut
think
through,
revenge means
high-pitched and
destruction.
frantic, but I
But
couldn't
my
make out
revenge
what she was
survival,
saying.
standing
The
whole
sound
when I
drove
had
me
every reason to
insane.
crumble.
I bolted up the
She had
stairs,
begged
cops
that
on
day,
my heels.
But it was too
My
late
heart
not
was
for her
pounding
safety,
so hard I could
not
feel
for
it
her
in my
excuses,
temples.
but for the marriage
At the top
we'd
of the
already
stairs,
lost.
I reached for my
And as I
waistband
sat on my
almost on
porch one
instinct.
evening, watching
And
the
that's
sun
when my
sink in
hand wrapped
golden
around
stripes
cold
across the
steel,
water,
my magnum.
I realized
I hadn't
the
even
sweetest
realized
revenge
I'd
wasn't
grabbed it from the
exposing
truck
her
in
or
my
ending
rush.
it all in front of
I
an
pulled it
audience.
free,
It
the
was
weight
this,
grounding me in a way,
life
focusing
rebuilt,
all my fury
steadier,
into one single
stronger,
thought:
untouched
protect
by
my
her
daughter.
choices. A life
When
that
I
was
stormed into
finally
her room,
fully mine.